Oh, that song choice. That song choice is really something. Barry Rubin, thank you for that. Welcome everybody to RVAT Live. It's nice to see so many people are watching and with us today. I expect it is because our guest today is very famous and fresh off her debut live appearance on The View. Every producer in the country is trying to get her on their show. But she's here with us on RVAT Live today. Olivia Troye, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all.
All right,
I'm excited to be here. And I just want to express my gratitude to RVAT and this community. I honestly never in a million years did I ever think that I would be in this situation as a career intel officer. I mean, you just don't really do things this right. They train you to do the opposite, if anything. But I strongly believe in it. I know that we are in a really tough place in our country, and I couldn't have done this without you all, honestly. I just, I really feel that it was the strength that I got from you all, and knowing that there were people out there that would have my back who were feeling the same way I was, except for I was living it firsthand, and I was watching the statements and everything coming out from other fellow Republicans or other supporters who are not as divisive as where we are today. And I really just appreciate the safety net that this has given me as I try to kind of, keep strength and just keep speaking out and telling people firsthand what I saw and why it matters.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I say, I think cowardice is contagious, and it's something that has dominated the political environment around Trump over the last 3.5 years, but courage can be contagious too. And Miles Taylor and Elizabeth Newman and Olivia Troye, all of whom now have spoken out. And I'll point out, I think, something that struck me, and I think Bill would agree with me. It's amazing. There's a lot of people around the president who, this is probably their last gig. They've been, they're in their 70s. But it seems to be that it's a lot of younger people who have a lot to risk in terms of career, in terms of their future, who have found that they have to say something, that they just sort of can't let this go without saying something. Why do you think that is? What do you think it is about sort of you, Elizabeth, and Miles, and why you've decided to speak out when others haven't? Oh, we lost your audio.
There we are. I wish others, honestly, candidly, I wish others would speak out. They have, like you said, they probably have a little bit less to lose. I mean, honestly, they've led honorable careers. They've been there. They've seen it all. They've seen it in different administrations. I mean, we have as well, but not for as long of a tenure. But I think for us, and I think the world of Miles and Elizabeth for coming forward. When I first saw Miles's video, I'm not going to lie, I think I almost dropped the phone when I was looking at it, realizing that it was him, my colleague, someone that I knew. But I think it's because, we may be, this may hurt us in the long run in our careers, right? But the fact of the matter is we lived it, and I think it was important. I know that it was for Miles and for me and Elizabeth, but I think it's because we're looking at the future, right? We're only, we're still fairly young, and we're watching what's happening around us. And this is not probably how we were raised or where we were when we were younger, right? There was a very different environment growing up that I was growing up in, right? I could be best friends with Democrats. My best friend growing up was a Democrat. And I think, watching what's happening and then just watching the rhetoric that continues to happen and what's happening to our country, I think looking at it, I think we just couldn't take it anymore, especially being on the inside. I think it was just important to get the truth out and say, hey, this is not okay. We're going to reach across the aisle. We got to support the candidate that's going to do the best job for our country. We're in a terrible place.
Bill?
No, it's impressive what you've all done, obviously. I was struck, I think you have a story, maybe it's your first year in Washington almost, your first year working at the Republican National Committee, and on 9/11 you walked home to Northern Virginia because they shut down, obviously, the public transport, and I was in Washington. We were in Washington then, Sarah and I, and it was such an effect. It had an effect everywhere in the country, of course, but maybe a little more in New York and Washington, where you saw what was happening so close. And I think Elizabeth also may have gone in. I can't remember exactly her biography, but I think she was very much affected by 9/11 and her decision to go into counterterrorism. I think you were in Iraq, is that right? In 2004, 2003, 2004.
I
So
was. I was
yeah,
in Baghdad in 2003 after
as a
that.
civilian volunteer. So I mean, I do think maybe for you too, this is why you went into government service, and it was a united for this country. It wasn't as a partisan matter, really. It wasn't as a to advance a particular tiny special interest agenda item or something. It wasn't for your own, glory. And I do think you all have shown a kind of patriotism that a lot of older people are patriotic too, obviously. But, they got a little jaded over the years, I think, a little used to saying, well, I don't know if I need to get into that. I heard it directly from someone today who's in touch with a very senior person. And it was sort of, look, if I felt I really, really had to, I could do it. But I think maybe it's better for now. If I stay out of it, I can do some more good later on, whatever that would mean. So anyway, I very much admire what all three of you have done and are doing. So what's it been like? I mean, you've been out. So the video was what, just a week ago? It's hard to believe. No, 8 days ago, something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think that's
and you know what? Barry is eager for us to test out the tech and make sure that we can do this. So actually, we're going to show everybody Olivia's
video. And Barry Rubin did this video, so he wants to show it. So we say Barry Rubin did a good job on it. So, okay.
Yeah. So Barry, go ahead. Roll the video.
Everything I had seen in 2 years of working in the White House, what was really the breaking point was the day of the Lafayette Square incident with the president. Watching someone carry a Bible and clear up peaceful protesters in a fairly violent way, as a person of faith, it was a really dark moment. That was the moment where I really had to sit down and dig deep and say, no matter how hard I work, it doesn't matter, because the president is so disconnected from the reality of the problems across our country. We will no longer be America after 4 more years of Trump. He wants people out on the streets. The president claims to be pro-law enforcement. He is putting our law enforcement in harm's way purposely because he thinks that it serves his agenda. I would say to my colleagues, if you're going to speak out, right now is when it matters most. We've all lived it. We know that President Trump cares only about himself. Given where we are as a country, now is the time to tell the truth.
Amazing. And I will say, though, that's funny. That is the second video that we did from your interview, and not the original one that we released that sort of talks about your time on the COVID task force, which is fine. But so let's talk about that a little bit. So I met you that day that you had decided, you were ready to sort of tell your story. And we went to the studio to shoot the video, and you were pretty nervous, but you were also very determined to tell this story. Tell me how you felt that day.
Well, Sarah, I was terrified. I mean, I think that you could see it. I mean, I think I was shaking the entire time that I walked into the building. I'm not embarrassed to admit that. I mean, it's the truth. And, even after the video, I got to tell you, I left you guys. You guys were wonderful. You were, encouraging and welcoming. And it was, it was hard, but, and I remember leaving and I had to take 5 minutes when I was sitting in the car because I was shaking so hard and I was thinking, what did I just do? But I felt strongly that it was the right thing. And I was like, no matter what comes, I will know in my heart that I did everything I could in this moment that really matters. And I think that's what I kept thinking in my head when I showed up to do the video. I mean, you asked some questions that, to be honest, I think, and I think at times you saw the emotion that I felt during it. It's still really hard for me to talk about some of these things because I think it's sort of like when you're talking about it past tense and you're looking back at what you saw firsthand, in the moment, you're working insane hours, especially most recently on the COVID task force. And I don't think you take the time to really, you have these emotions and reactions when things happen. You talk to your colleagues that are on the team. They have similar concerns. But I don't think that you ever really truly process it until you walk away from it. And I will be honest, talking to you probably just made it so much more real of what I had gone through and emotionally how it had affected me more than I probably even realized. But I was determined people needed to know that, right? From someone who was working there and others who are working there on what it's really like. I mean, what you see with the president, that's really who he is. And the core circle around him of people that are his main people that he, works through in his sphere of influence, they're all pretty much the same. I mean, and, so I just think that it was important for people to hear it. Like, I know you're watching the news, you see these articles, and I think that you think yourself, it can't be that bad, right? It can't honestly be that bad. And I think I shared some stories with you, Sarah, where it was just like, I could see in your reaction that you're like, okay, this is like, I've read about it, I've seen it, but it's true. It really is that bad. And I just wanted to people know that they needed to hear this before we go vote, because they need to have all of those factors as part of their equation.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really struck me when you were talking was the story that you told about being at one of the briefings with the task force and the president saying that he thought COVID-19 was actually potentially a good thing because it meant he no longer had to shake hands with these disgusting people. And I remember when we were taping it, I was so taken aback by that story that I stopped you and I said, that's 100% going to be in this video. Like, tell me more about that, whatever. And you remembered where you were sitting. You remembered exactly how he said it. Like because I was like, that is crazy. And you said it in a room full of people. But that has obviously gotten a lot of attention. You talked about it a little bit this morning on The View. But how did it make you feel to hear the president of the United States refer to his own voters as disgusting?
It was really heartbreaking on a personal level, to be honest, because, I expected the president to come in, everybody stands up, he walks in, it's the president of the United States. I'm not going to lie. Like every time he's in the room, you think, oh my gosh, it's the president. I'm sitting right next to the president. That's what really goes through your head, especially for me as a staff person. But the last thing I expected was for him to kick off the meeting, talk about a few trivial things, and then say, okay, so this COVID thing, and literally that's how he starts to address it. And then he talks about it like maybe it's not a bad thing. And I think that was just so shocking to me that you could, maybe you've been thinking this all the way, because it's like, oh, this is good. I mean, I don't have to like touch these people that I'm going to these rallies to that I think are disgusting and gross. This gets me out of that. I couldn't I just couldn't get over it. I remember thinking about it in the moment. I also, by the way, remember reacting to it probably visibly. I know that there are people in that room who saw my face react, and then I had to like kind of lock it in and realize that the shock of hearing it. And I was thinking to myself, like, gosh, these are the same people you proclaim to care about. Like you proclaim that you are their person. You ran on a campaign and platform that you were going to support these people, right? That you were going to change Washington, that you were not the establishment, that you were so different. But I guess what's really horrifying about that is that you have no relation to these people, and you may be changing the establishment in your head, but you actually have no desire to really care about these people. This is what you really think about them. And if they knew that, I wonder if they would be risking their lives going to these rallies in the middle of a pandemic to sit there and sing praises and follow you unwaveringly, when you're probably, I could just see him likely looking out there saying, well, it's a good thing. Now I'm 10 feet away. They're not coming near me, and I can just go home and, quite frankly, eat my cheeseburger back at the White House, and I don't have to see them ever again. I mean, that's awful.
That is what's amazing about the pictures of the rallies, right? Is that there's this sea of people, maskless, packed together, and then like you can see that he's 10 feet away with like a white line drawn in front of him, standing back from them, kind of being like, hey guys. And it's just, the contrast there is really, really crazy. So when you're in these rooms, though, I've just got to ask, and he says these things, you tell another story about how, the COVID task force is gathered and you're trying to brief him on something really important, getting people off the cruise ships. And you just can't get the guy to focus because he's complaining about what the host on a television station said the night before and trying to get somebody to deal with it. When you guys are trying desperately to save American lives and trying to get the president focused on saving American lives, and he is consumed by like petty, trivial things, like what is everybody else doing in the room? Like, you've now told these stories, but like, what is it that there's like got to be lots of people in the room? What do you see going through people's minds as they observe this?
Sarah, it's incredibly awkward for everyone in the room. I can't tell you how uncomfortable it feels in the moment. I mean, I could see it. I looked over at the vice president. I was sitting across from him on the back bench, as they love to refer me to. I am a backbencher and I'm proud of it. That's where the worker bees sit. But I looked around the table, especially that in that specific moment. These are people, I mean, this happened on a weekend. I remember this clearly. And I remember this because I always felt bad that we were going to pull people away from their families. They were already working day and night. And we were going to come in, but it was necessary. And these people were willing to do it. I mean, nobody was shying away from the fact that they were all trying to just get the job done. But it was just, you can tell that everyone's thinking the same thing. I mean, everyone's, people are looking down at their notes. They're looking down at the table in the situation room. They're looking down, at their feet. I visibly saw the vice president just kind of looking around. I mean, for him especially, I can't imagine. It must be, I know it must be so awkward and somewhat humiliating because technically this is his task force, right? He's leading it. And, there he is in the second chair waiting to get through this agenda. By the way, an agenda that I worked hard on for the night before with the members of the task force to discuss what can we, knock out in an hour or two that needs to get done so we can move on to the next thing. And for 45 minutes, instead, we're sitting there talking about how angry he was about some news anchor and going off on it. And then he was tasking out. He was looking around the room and he's like, who's going to call this person? Can you take care of it? His favorites like, Hope, are you going to call them and set them straight? All right. I got to be honest with you. We did move on to a couple of agenda items. Probably 20 minutes later, it was like watching someone like my dog say squirrel, because we came back to it. It was still in the back of his head. So I kind of want to be like, did you hear anything that anybody in this room said? Because we need you to make a decision right now on this. And instead it was like, okay, so, I mean, I still can't believe he said that. The way he treated you, and I was just like, are we really back to this? I mean,
But this is what's wild to me about this story, because it seems like almost a perfect microcosm or a perfect example of Donald Trump being focused on something that's about himself at a time when the focus of the conversation is really about other people and how you save lives. And I guess, is it too much to say that he just doesn't seem that concerned? Like, why isn't he more concerned with saving people's lives? Or from your perspective, did you think, was he just not interested in managing this COVID thing, as he called it?
I mean, this is a very challenging time, and it is a very real and hard issue. I think that it would be different if we were dealing with someone who was a rational human being and actually cared about anyone else but himself. I mean, I can't think of any other reason why he would behave this way. But unless it's actually directly impacting him as a person, and I'm not talking about, even his base or his voters or anything like that. I think he, as a human being, if it's not about Donald Trump and it's not affecting him directly, I don't think that it really sort of makes any sense to him. It's just not, it's not in the realm of where he lives and in his reality. And I think that is why it's so dangerous, because I think that, and I'm going to be honest, he understands the facts. I mean, obviously, as Bob Woodward told us, he's processing the information. He's clearly heard the briefings. He knows how bad this is going to be. He knows what it means, and he kind of seems a little scared about it, right? I could tell that the way his responses were, that it's not like he's tuning it out. So he's very well aware, but he's a president. He is very well protected from wherever he's sitting, right? And he probably thinks, it's never really going to affect him, even though it actually was affecting a lot of people on the staff. I mean, it was affecting the people who were doing the advance. It was affecting the people who were on his team, the staff sitting behind the stage, the people setting this up. Those people were getting sick.
I forgot about that. Bill, do you want to jump in? Because Bill, you've been around White Houses before. How weird is it to just have a president who just doesn't listen to a task force?
Yeah, no, I had flashbacks as Olivia discussed sitting against the wall, as a vice presidential staffer, since I did that 30 years ago. But the White House hasn't changed as much as other workplaces, I think. It still looks the same. I recognize all the photos of the cabinet room and the Roosevelt room and the vice president's office for that matter. And so it has been sort of especially with Olivia as a vice presidential staffer, it's been a little more uncanny for me. But I guess I was struck by this too. Trump's defenders will say, well, he lets off steam sometimes, so says things he shouldn't say, and you can take those out of context. And look, it is true that I work for two real gentlemen in the White House, George H.W. Bush and Dan Quayle, but of course at 7 p.m. or something at the end of a long day, if there were just 3 or 4 of us in the office, would they say, that guy, I don't really, that guy's kind of a jerk, or, whatever. They wouldn't say something like what Trump said about not caring about, not COVID being a good thing because they didn't have to shake hands. But, they would say things you wouldn't want to say in a room of 20 people or certainly in public. But the idea that you would do this in the middle of a meeting, especially on a weekend, when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Redfield and Dr. Birx and everyone have come there, prepared carefully. You were up late the night before working on the agenda, talking to them to really deal with a genuine crisis. It would be as if during the Gulf War, which was in 1990 when Saddam invaded Kuwait, they just, in those meetings, that Bush would just waste 45 minutes complaining about press coverage or something like that, while Brent Scowcroft and Dick Cheney and Jim Baker sat there and twiddled their thumbs and looked, and everyone else looked kind of awkward. It's almost inconceivable. I mean, for me, having said all that, I was surprised by what you said, by what you came forward to say, or the details, I guess, and it was a little worse than I expected. For me, the most horrifying thing, honestly, though, has been the attacks on you by people you worked with, which are just lies. And I mean, I really feel confident saying they're lies, not just because I trust you and you said they were lies, but because obviously when you came forward through Miles Taylor, whom you knew from DHS, he testified about you. Obviously, we did a little, checking around very quietly to make sure, I don't know, you weren't just some disgruntled employee. How do we know? I'd never met you till what? We'd never met, Sarah and I never met you till 3 weeks ago, I think. And I mean, everyone spoke very highly of you. We've learned, we became familiar with the circumstances of your deciding to leave and all that. And then for them just to stand up there at the White House podium, not on background or somewhere late at night in a bar, at White House podium, and say, well, I fired her and escorted her out of the White House, and she was a disgruntled employee and her job performance had gone down, when it's just manifestly false. And if it weren't false, and suddenly they would have brought forth some email or removing you. I guess they couldn't fire you with your career, but I guess sending you back to DHS. Instead, they renewed you. You were sent over for a year first, right? And then they renewed you for a second year, and then for a third year, which is very uncommon from my memory in the White House. And everyone spoke extremely well of you, and I know some of your colleagues have confirmed that privately since you've left. So I just the flat out lying on this president's behalf. I just find that kind of astonishing. I guess I'm not used to that. I'm used to people spinning, but I'm still not used to just the utter A, disregard for the truth, and B, the willingness to sort of slander someone who is you are saying what you saw.
Yeah, and I guess, I'm not the only one. And I don't know that there's no line with them. They don't draw the line. They don't respect the line. They will do whatever it takes. And I'm confident, having worked with General Kellogg, I was on his team for over 2 years. I've had conversations. I had a conversation, after when I decided to resign. I mean, he and I both know the actual truth about how this all went down. And I'm 100% confident that the president was like, you got to get out there. I mean, and I'm sure that that's what happened. And I know that the vice president, he also came out and said I was a disgruntled employee. That was probably even more hurtful because of the conversations and how closely I worked for him. I mean, I still say I have respect for the vice president. I know the situation he was in. I know it was a hard one, like everyone else was facing. But on the other hand, I mean, I guess I should just say, I'm grateful. If I'm a disgruntled employee, that means that I'm calling them out and I'm telling the truth. Because whenever anyone tries to say anything that doesn't fit with whatever narrative they're trying to cover up, and if they try to say, no, this is actually what's really happening, I saw it firsthand, then that's what they call you. You're a disgruntled employee, because they have nothing else to say about it, because everyone else in that White House actually knows that you're telling the truth. That is what is so kind of astonishing, is that has to be their tagline, because they don't have anything else, because they've all lived it. They're probably all thinking the same thing about what's going on, but now you're just, you've joined the ranks. And I honestly, I hope that more people will come forward. And, I would say to them, the group of disgruntled employees are actually just trying to do what's best for the country. And I'll happily carry that label if it means that makes me an honorable human being, and I can look myself in the mirror and go to sleep at night knowing that I am doing 100% what's right.
But it's obvious that your judgment was the same as people who've been a little less forward-leaning and coming out, but who've left unchallenged accounts and books by reporters and stuff of what they think. So you think the same thing, basically, that John Kelly and Jim Mattis and many other people who served in Tillerson and others who served at high levels of that administration and seen the president very, very, John Bolton. John Bolton wrote a whole book. I think he, maybe he should have waited to publish it and before testifying and so forth. But no one's challenged the veracity of any of his accounts, honestly. He gives extremely detailed. That book, I was talking to a friend who teaches at a school of public policy, who's not a fan of Bolton, who's kind of a liberal and, has argued with John over the years and doesn't think, anyway, whatever. He's got his issues with Bolton. But he said that book's going to be assigned in courses for 20 years because you get a TikTok there on a day-to-day basis of how the president ran foreign policy. It wasn't quite the coronavirus crisis, but there was a lot of very complicated and difficult issues. And it's appalling. And again, I know I was in the White House. If you had proof that if someone came out, we luckily didn't really have much of this, but if someone had said, Dan Quayle said this at this meeting or didn't refuse to do this or whatever, we would have had within 2 hours statements by 6 people who were at the meeting saying did not happen, or this meeting did not happen, or the statement was never made. It's not that hard to do that, right? And no one has done that, of course, for you or for any of the other comments that Kelly and Mattis and Bolton and others have reported, or directly or indirectly. It's all true. It's all true. And then for them to come out and lie shamelessly, because Trump wanted them to, incidentally. I'm sure the vice president wasn't happy. He really was as muted as he felt he could be, I'm sure, and said just one sentence about, well, I think she was an unhappy employee or something, and just left it at that. I'm sure that it shows how Trump just corrupts, really, everyone around him. It's been a theme of our colleague Jonathan Last, and I really felt like watching the assault on you. I saw it like playing out in real time in a way.
Yeah, one of the
you held up great though, so that's good.
one of the goofy things that they've come out and said is that they've got this letter that you wrote, right? So you write this letter when you leave, and the letter is like praising all the people on the task force for doing such a good job and working so tirelessly for the American people. And they keep reading it on TV as some like exculpatory evidence that you loved them and therefore, couldn't actually mean what you say about what the president did. But one of the crazy things about that particular thing that they're doing is like your whole point, it seems to me, is that task force was doing incredibly important life-saving work. And it was the president who kept undermining everything that they were trying to do. And so reading that letter is utterly consistent with what you've said. It in no way contradicts anything the way that they're implying. Can you speak to that for 1 second?
No, and I'm going to tell you, I wrote that letter very thoughtfully, because as I was writing and I knew I was leaving, I was thinking about the fact that I had worked a lot of hours to really help a lot of the people on this task force navigate this environment, navigate some of the policies. And look, were there mistakes made by the task force members? Yes. It is a pandemic. We're all learning what to do. Some things were unexpected. Some things we just didn't know were going to happen. So I'm not saying that they were, that there weren't mistakes made, but the genuineness of commitment by a lot of those people was certainly there. Nobody's going to sign up for these types of roles, especially the doctors and scientists. That is their career's work. They've spent their entire lives dedicated to this, right? And it was just, so when I sent that letter out, I really was thanking them, because I had seen how hard it was and everything that we had gone through together. And I know those people on a very personal level. I've had long conversations with them at night. We've tried to figure out what was going to, what needed to be taken care of the next day. gotten to know some of their families. I mean, these are people that I genuinely still care about today. I mean, they were a big part of my life during a very, very tense period. And I just think it's ironic. I mean, I never mentioned the president in that letter for a reason, because I remember writing that letter and I purposely did not mention him, because I was like, don't you dare think that I'm thanking you, because I am not, because you have made this so much harder, and you are responsible for the loss of life, because everything these people try to do in one instance, you could have the mic and derail it without us even knowing that it was coming.
Yeah. I got a comment here, and Bill, tell me what you think about this too. But one of the things that's striking now that we've done, you're the third person where we've released a video and sort of helped kind of Sherpa out the story into the light. But the guns that they've brought against you have been so much more intense than what they brought against Miles and Elizabeth. I mean, they're just coming at you so much harder. And I think that the reason is that not only are they just so completely aware of how devastating your account could be for Trump, but I also feel like what they're trying to do is, now that they've seen multiple people come out, is they're trying to shut this down. They don't want to see a bunch more voices come out. But what do you think? Do you think there's more people ready to speak up? Do you think these intimidation tactics coming out trying to smear you, is that working? What do you think?
I do think that you're absolutely right. I do think that they're worried, because they know that, even I know people that are like, they personally know that they have at some point felt this way. And I think that they should be concerned. I mean, because I think that they're realizing that the level of frustration is bubbling. It's there. I mean, and there's only so long that someone can hang on without fighting the good fight from within and saying, it doesn't matter how hard I fight. It's actually, I'm not getting anywhere, or or it doesn't matter, because even though I think I'm making a difference, at some point, it's probably better to speak out and stop this, because we might end up in another 4 years of this. And so, but I can see that. And I think they certainly are trying to do that to intimidate them. And I've had conversations with people that are still inside the government, still inside the White House, that I know are struggling with what to do right now. And I do think that there will be more people coming forward. I think that there was also people that, quite frankly, some people in there are just trying to hang on, because if they left, it would probably be a danger, an even graver danger to the American people, by who would end up replacing them. And these are people in very critical roles that are leading agencies, that are currently actively fighting to make sure that something isn't done that could end up really actually creating great harm. And I'm talking mostly in the public health arena.
Yeah, let me ask you about that going forward. And obviously don't betray any confidences, but you have better judgment than the rest of us when you read these articles about CDC reversing itself on guidance apparently under White House pressure. When you read about FDA under pressure to change the way in which they, I guess, approve the vaccines. The press conference was just a day or two ago that the HHS Secretary Azar and Seema Verma had. What were they? Oh, yes, to announce this $200 coupon from the president, but also some alleged health policy changes, none of which seems to be based on anything, and there were no professionals there to talk about the actual health. I mean, how worried are you just about the next 5-6 weeks, I guess, in terms of the even greater politicization than you saw, the even greater steamrolling of the experts, and genuinely things happening that are dangerous to our public health?
It's clear. I'm very aware that the White House knows that this response isn't going well. That this is one of the areas that's affecting every single American in our country, right? We're sitting here, we have to take precautions. People have lost loved ones. There are people that are watching loved ones, or they themselves living with COVID, and we don't know the long-term effects. I mean, and there's definitely, I know people who still have symptoms today. It's not an easy thing to live with. And I think that from the White House perspective, I'm sure they're scared, and they're gonna, what scares me is that they are going to look at every possible tactic out there to say we either solved it, or hey, going forward, we're going to have this therapeutic or this tool and everything's going to be okay. And it was because of the great leadership of the president that we were able to get there. And science is science. You can't change the facts. You hear Dr. Fauci talk about this all the time. I have tremendous respect for him. He is always very honest, even in meetings. I mean, I would watch people, and even I would watch the politicals roll their eyes when he would say something that they just didn't want him to say, but he was telling the truth. And so to me, I am worried. I'm worried that you're going to see some outlandish announcements come out. It's going to be fireworks and pomp and circumstance. There's a lot of discussion and debate on the vaccine and its safety. And that is not an issue that we should even be remotely politicizing or joking about. I mean, this is the well-being of all of us, of humans. This is life. I mean, it could kill people, and I would not put it past him that the president would do something to override the regulations or things like that. You're seeing it in the news, and these guidelines that are there to protect people, even in the workplace or things like that. I've seen a lot of stuff firsthand that is incredibly disturbing, and I mean, as an average citizen, you should know that, everyone should be watching that very closely. And I would listen to the doctors. I'm going to say that they're going to do the right thing. And they're under a lot of pressure. There's the president's watching them. Let me tell you, he is watching them closely. And if you step out of line, you certainly get your hand slapped. I've seen it firsthand of how they get treated. But they're going to tell you the truth, and I respect that. I mean, they'll testify. They're going to keep speaking out at whatever cost. And I would listen to what they're saying, because they are trying to speak to you. They're trying to tell you what's happening, and they may pay for it behind the scenes. But I would definitely watch for signs, and I would not take it as a badge of honor if something launches pretty quickly that doesn't seem right, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. What do you think? I mean, because this idea that now a vaccine is political, being politicized. Like, we all want a vaccine. When the vaccine comes out, we want people to trust it. We want people to take it, assuming that it's good. But now everybody is all freaked out that Trump might rush something through for political reasons. What do you think the doctors would do, though, if he really tried to do that? I mean, would people resign? Like, people wouldn't actually... this is one of those places where I feel like the guardrails have still got to be there. You saw that letter come out from a bunch of different pharmaceutical companies committing to ensuring that this would be, they would take it really seriously. They would not be rushing the process. What do you think? Are we protected there, or is it really possible Trump could jam this through without massive resignations or Dr. Fauci speaking out?
I 100% think that if there is something egregious, the doctors will say it. They will come out and speak out at whatever cost. I mean, there's only so much blame, but what I would say to the doctors, safety in numbers, you're all in the same boat, right? I mean, we've all seen each other go through it, and your friends, a lot of them, were each other's mentors. And it's, and I have confidence that they will do the right thing. I mean, at what cost? I mean, at that point, if you see something, I don't see what they would gain from just hanging on and not saying anything. And that would honestly go against everything that I know of these people and their careers and their commitment to science and what they've been saying. And I would have high confidence that they would come out and say something if they didn't think was right. They've all said that this vaccine, the timeline is probably, we're looking at spring. Right? Spring of next year, likely timeframe, maybe even summer. Those have been the timelines. Those were the timelines that were consistent with the briefings that I sat in. Vaccines take time. I mean, the testing of vaccines takes time, the development, they find human error, or they'll find things, things that are dangerous, or they'll test it out, and sometimes you start over. I mean, these are scientists that are doing the work. They know the pressure's on. They know that there's a timeline, and it's important. And I have the confidence they're doing the right thing and doing the hard work. But you can't make a vaccine, and science doesn't happen immediately overnight. You have to trust the data and test it.
But we do have a president that's out there saying we'll have a vaccine. Somehow, miraculously, it's like right around October 2nd. Seems like suspiciously specific in terms
How
of
convenient.
Yeah. So I guess just before we go, because we're getting down, tell us about what was your last straw. So you'd been in the White House, you'd been for a couple of years, you'd been with the vice president all the time, you'd been working hard day and night, like you say, to protect the American people. Like, what's the thing that makes you just one day say, I cannot do this anymore?
I think one of the breaking points, I mean, I had seen so much in my tenure there in the 2 years, but honestly, and you've heard me say this before, hanging in there, just the combination of how politically charged everything was, and knowing that you're doing things and you're helping people and you're trying to make a difference, but sometimes the forces are always going to work against you. But the one low point was just a hypocrisy of the president walking across Lafayette Square. I mean, that I just personally could not come back from that. It was hard to continue working in the environment. I kept working hard on the COVID task force and everything. But watching that when he had a national platform, especially in the middle of a pandemic crisis, where he could have shown actual real leadership, and using our law enforcement forces in that manner, and walking across, and honestly, quite frankly, using the Bible in that manner. I mean, holding it upside down, walking over to that church that had just burned, that really just hurt. It just showed everything about his character that I had seen the entire time.
Bill, I think you're muted.
I'm just curious. I mean, we all saw that on TV, obviously. Were you in the old executive office, what I still call the old executive office building? What's it called now? The Eisenhower Executive Office Building, which is that big ornate building next to the White House, which I guess is where your office was. Were you there at the time when he walked across? Did you see it out the window? How did that work? I mean, it must have been crazy to...
I was there. I mean, I had been there throughout the day. I'd been there every day when we had, the protesters outside. I could hear the chants actually every day at my desk when I was working during that time. I actually had gone outside the building to walk around because I was like, this is a moment in time. I'm going to go out and see this for myself. And I walked around with a friend to kind of observe it, and just kind of take it in and really just see what was happening in our country firsthand, especially because, sometimes it's tunnel vision, you're working, you hear it outside the building. And I was like, I need to get out and see this. And I need to see what's happening outside these walls, and not, I could have buried my head, but I didn't. And I had just walked outside the grounds. I've got to be honest, I felt perfectly safe. I had my mask on. If anything, I was, kind of just being very cautious, because I just wanted to make sure that I was being careful, because we are in a pandemic and you got to be careful about that, and especially exposing your coworkers and my own family. And I walked back in and I went back to work, because I had a lot of hours of work to do. And I got an email from Secret Service saying that it was, they needed us to clear out by a certain time. And I found that a little bit surprising. I was, it kind of shook me, I'm going to be honest, because I was like, what happened in the past half hour since I was walking outside? I mean, how is there something bad that's about to happen to the White House? Like, are they going to, what is going on? Is it super dangerous, or what does the Secret Service know that I don't know? And then I was also thinking, did I miss an alert while I was focused on COVID? Because I am the Homeland Security person, right? I get these alerts from law enforcement and things like that. And I said, did I drop the ball? Did I not tell the vice president something? And then I started to kind of think about that. But I sent staff home that day. I said, if they're saying that it's better for you to go home now, don't wait till 4:00 when they said do that. Just go home. We'll talk on the phone. We'll work on agendas later. And I wrapped up, and I walked out, and I saw military vehicles, National Guard moving in, and I was kind of confused. I was like, wow, something is really going down. I don't know what it is. This is kind of, it was just very confusing. It also brought back memories, to be honest, of 9/11, because I remember walking around the city and living it and seeing the military, vehicles around. So I drove home and I had texted my husband. I called my family and I said, hey, they're clearing us out. I don't know what's happening, but I'm safe right now. Can you see anything going on the TV? I mean, just let me know, and I'm going to try to drive home so I can get out of the city in time if something really bad's about to happen. And I got home and I turned on the TV and I was a little confused because I saw Attorney General Barr walking around, kind of looking around the White House grounds, and I was confused because, first I actually was wondering why he was outside, because we had just been cleared out of the building. So it seemed counterintuitive to the safety aspect of it in my head. And then I saw the president and an entire entourage and some of his family members walk across, and I was confused about what was happening. And I was sick to my stomach that night when I saw that he was actually just walking across and standing there and not saying anything. He didn't go there to pray. He didn't go there to make a speech of some sort. I guess it really, it's been called a photo op, and that's really what it was. I got to tell you that I have since heard more recently from people who were around him during that time that he celebrated that moment right after, and that there were high fives amongst each other. That makes me even more sick, because that is not okay. There were law enforcement that got hurt that day. There were Americans that got hurt that day. That didn't need to happen. And it's so hypocritical to stand there and hold a Bible in that moment, in a moment of hurt for our country. I just still can't believe that was the president of the United States today. And that's what happened. Yeah,
that is wild. Hey, I haven't taken any, there's been a lot of questions that are being texted to me, and I haven't done any of them. So just to be fair to all the people who are watching, I want to ask one question. I've gotten it multiple times, which is, everybody wants to know about Jared, and had Jared's role in COVID and what he was doing. And there's that Vanity Fair article that came out where that made like a pretty insane accusation that they just weren't going to, they felt like it was a blue state problem. And so they weren't going to deal with it, which is interesting, actually, because Miles Taylor makes a very similar allegation around the wildfires, where Donald Trump was not interested in helping people in California whose houses were burning down because it was a blue state that didn't support him. And so you must have had seen something of Jared and getting involved there as part of what was happening in the White House. What was your impression?
But first, I will tell you that the story that Miles is telling going on the California wildfires is true. I covered natural disasters for the vice president, and I personally know that there was a delay on processing, actions for response. There was a lot of frustration in that area, specifically against some of these states that lean democratically. So he is 100% telling the truth. I saw that repeatedly throughout my tenure there. But in terms of this topic on Jared, I will say that the reporting is accurate. He did make comments like that. Jared is also, he's fairly politically astute though. So these comments were mostly made in smaller settings, in smaller meetings, but there was clearly a bias towards there. And I will tell you, I have a lot of friends in New York City. I went to the same school that, actually, I'm almost embarrassed to say, but I'm very proud of my alma mater. I went to Penn. I went to the school that the Trumps went to. And I kept thinking about all these people who graduate from there and who live in Manhattan. And there was certainly, I will say firsthand, I saw a bias, against helping New York. And that was one of the hardest hit spots in our country. And it was sort of the fact that whatever bias or politics would come into play when these people are hurting and our hospital workers are struggling on the front line. I think that you should take heed that there is some truth to that about Jared and his perspective and his role in this kind of thing.
Okay. Well, we're going to leave it there. Olivia, Thank you so much, not just for doing this live cast, but also for coming out, telling the truth, telling people what you saw, trying to help Americans understand what's going on inside so that they can make a more informed decision in 2020. You, like many of the other Republican voters against Trump, is a lifelong Republican who has endorsed Joe Biden based on what you saw. If we have anybody else like that, you don't have to have worked in the White House to make a video. We'd love to hear your testimonials. And I just appreciate your bravery. And
thank you.
And I appreciate all of you for watching us and hanging out with us on another live stream with Republican voters against Trump. Bill, as always.
Thank you, Olivia, for everything, really.
Thank you all.
All right. Take care, everybody.
You will.